Hey guys, Jackdaw here, hitting you this week with a Mass Effect video. What's going on here? Now, I know that Anthem is literally just around the corner, like it'll be playable to those with pre-orders or Origin access next week, and then it's onto its full release literally 2 weeks after that. And of course, Dragon Age 4 is at least 2 years away, which I obviously am extensively covering with video content every single week. Yet here I am today. It's the start of 2019 and Jackdaw's creating a Mass Effect video. You see, you guys, I love Mass Effect. It's my absolutely favourite franchise among any series, book, film, show, game, etc. I give Dragon Age its due credit, and I adore that franchise with all my heart. But Mass Effect is where BioWare truly shine in my opinion, disregarding Andromeda. Mass Effect is the franchise that I've grown up with for the past 10 years. It's even half my age. I can technically say it's been with me for half my lifetime if I want to be such a nerd. And I've honestly missed talking about Mass Effect. Of course, those of you who have been subscribers for so long will have known that I was basically an Andromeda content creator. Now Dragon Age since Andromeda's mistakes, but originally I literally just made videos on Mass Effect. It's been so long since those days when I used to delve into content surrounding my favourite universe, and I just can't let this series die. And it seems Casey Hudson feels the same way. You know, I've given Mass Effect quite a hard break regarding its content. I really haven't talked about it probably for a year and a half. I feel like I've given it quite a bit of time to sit and stir, but now I'm just kind of feeling nostalgic and just want to delve back into talking about it again. So with that, today I'm once more looking into the future of Mass Effect, plunging into where the franchise will go since Andromeda's ramshackle attempt at rebooting the franchise. Honestly, I really do respect Andromeda for at least trying to create a new narrative for the Mass Effect franchise, arching into many games from that. It's just the direction that the game took and the sheer lack of knowledge of games design from BioWare Montreal that, for a lack of better words, screwed this spin-off from the very start. Andromeda simply didn't have the heart and soul of a Mass Effect game, nor its essence. And that's simply because the team had no experience of creating the previous entries. Andromeda was in fact their first very game as a team to create. Sounds very daunting. Although regarding BioWare now, Casey Hudson, the original trilogy's director, has since returned to BioWare. There is hope for the future of Mass Effect. The series has its pioneer back in the studio. Mass Effect now has its vision, and under Casey's supervision, perhaps we could get a return to this beloved franchise in due time, repairing the mistakes of Andromeda with a new entry in the series from the same team as the trilogy. With that, I guess we've now got to ask ourselves, what is next for Mass Effect? Over the years, I've gathered and constructed many different concepts and ideas for where this franchise could go from here. So lock yourselves down guys, because we're heading at ludicrous speed into the future of Mass Effect. My first concept is a Mass Effect Milky Way spin-off. Now this is probably the best possible way for Mass Effect to return in my opinion. This is definitely my favourite idea I've got on this video. This concept revolves around returning to the beloved Milky Way galaxy as a new character surrounding an entirely new plotline in a spin-off fashion. I've always been enchanted by the idea of playing as one of the many races in Mass Effect, embarking on a grand space adventure, perhaps as a mercenary with a small crew against a more localized threat. Well, at least that's my pitch for today regarding such a spin-off. This title would encompass origin stories like Dragon Age Origins. As a perfect example for this title, if the player were to be an Asari, perhaps they've lived a life on the streets of Omega, fighting for scraps and living in poverty, experiencing the true harshness of this urban lifestyle that Omega entails and emits. This could be a completely different narrative as to someone else who perhaps plays as a Volus growing up in Ilium, or a Quarian living nomadically on a fleet. Either race the player picks, they'd always end up with the same goal, the same narrative objective. From any lifestyle, perhaps the player would become a highly skilled mercenary or freelancer, acquiring a ship for the first time in their life, building a squad and then opposing a smaller threat within the Milky Way. Just a quick role-playing influence idea there. However, on the flip of that idea, perhaps the player and their squad are able to fit the role of being anti-heroes within this galaxy, fulfilling a sort of Guardians of the Galaxy archetype-esque, allowing the squad to feel more antagonistic than ever before. Even scrap that idea and just let the players be the antagonists of this world. Let's Let's have a Mass Effect game where we can be villainous and stir up trouble in the terminus systems. I'm not rightly speaking on being the grand evil. I'm more for the idea of playing as a mercenary leader and experiencing a life of crime in this condensed space opera tied to a plot of backstabbings, betrayal and complete espionage. Perhaps an adventure filled with sneaking through the back streets of Omega, assassinating contracts, smuggling and stealing resources, hacking into operations and even just blatant bank robberies, all in a Mass Effect sci-fi fashion of course. It'd be a complete change up from the previous Mass Effect titles, and the way I see this concept, it's more of a back to the roots of BioWare. There would be a huge influence on character creation and freedom, with a story inspired by pen and paper role-playing games, influencing more of a Dungeons and Dragons feel than anything. Perhaps instead of a grand massive evil or a grandiose plot, it could simply have more of a role-playing D&D story. Do what you want when you want it, with small attachments to condensed narratives. In any case, this scenario would allow me to fulfill my many fantasies of playing as one of the very many Mass Effect races, with a fun, jaded and morally grey narrative to boot, all inspired by pen and paper RPGs, right back in the Milky Way, with even the possibility of coming across so many of the beloved Mass Effect characters that appeared in the original trilogy. Now, perhaps not as simple as it sounds, but possibly this title could even be in Mass Effect 4. Set after Mass Effect 3's events, this could be done if BioWare gave way to retconning 3's ending. After accomplishing that, perhaps BioWare could just simply pop this concept within the time space after the Milky Way is saved thanks to Shepard and co, and then this narrative can unfold. Again though, this is just one of my fantasies for a Mass Effect spin-off. I could talk about this concept all day, and perhaps maybe I will do in another video just on expanding this idea. For now though, we've got many other ideas and ways that Mass Effect can return to consider. How about an Andromeda sequel, a continuation of Mass Effect Andromeda's narrative created and crafted by the original developers of the trilogy? Now, this next possibility surrounds the Andromeda Galaxy, the very galaxy that we obviously explored in Andromeda. BioWare Montreal did a great job of opening up and setting this galaxy as a new narrative. The team were of course expecting on creating a trilogy within that space, and so they've planted plenty of seeds for the future of Andromeda. So perhaps now with Edmonton's developers on hand, we could potentially return to the Andromeda Galaxy. Of course, I've got multiple ideas of how this could work. The simplest concept is just a basic Andromeda sequel, perhaps fulfilling the reprising role as Ryder, picking up where things were dropped off. It'd be simple, however I just don't feel it would be a good idea, just considering the flack both Ryder and Andromeda's narrative got. It's still an idea though. You've got a protagonist already there, unfinished plot points to simply pick up, and an entire galaxy to frontier. However, a better and more efficient way for Mass Effect to return to the Andromeda Galaxy is to simply set the events of the next title 500 years ahead. This would allow all of Andromeda's ongoing political turmoil, misguided narratives, and just general settlement of humanity and other species on this galaxy to simply unfold, allowing time to pass. You'd have no more Ryder, no more dual companions, and a new palette in a galaxy that could have changed dramatically since its very origin. People could have simply forgotten about the Ryder twins and the establishment of the Andromeda Galaxy. With centuries ahead since the last game, there'd be new threats and species that may have evolved in the course of time, more characters, different technologies, even varied biotic capabilities, etc. A completely unique perspective on Mass Effect, just with the same original team working on this one. Perhaps a different protagonist, not related to the Ryder family, with a fresh cleanser of a world. This could literally be a blank canvas for the Mass Effect franchise to start again. And in a similar vein as this concept, however slightly adapted, considering Andromeda did get a lot of flack, what if the Andromeda Galaxy meets the Milky Way? Perhaps the two galaxies find and convey a way to correspond and transport to and from each galaxy. We would be able to share an experience of both world states, creating an incredible way to amalgamate the main game and the spin-off together, creating an adventure and narrative that could sprawl between two galaxies. Perhaps there could be an even more apocalyptic threat that risks more than just the destruction of worlds, but instead the entire vanquish of galaxies, rivaling a galactic opponent with the capabilities to wreak supreme havoc. Perhaps with the help of both the Andromeda and Milky Way galaxies, this narrative could easily overarch, creating a massive space opera scale of a story. And again, with the narrative set so far in the future, Mass Effect as a franchise would be recreating itself with no more tie-ins to Shepard or Ryder's adventures. They would simply be worlds apart from either story, which I guess it could be a good or a bad thing. It's a fresh start, a new palette, take it as you will. Anyhow, on to the next concept, a reboot of the franchise. In a very similar vein to games like PS4's God of War, 2013's Tomb Raider, and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Mass Effect could simply reboot itself following a very similar fashion. Each of the mentioned games have accepted the past games' narratives and lore. However, they don't particularly regard it, and it's not necessary in its new forwarding narrative. God of War, for example, Kratos' previous narratives with the Olympian gods, they don't necessarily really have an influence in his remembrance of his lover and new fatherhood revelations that the plot now goes in. And Breath of the Wild, hardly any of its previous stories sway much within this game's narrative. Perhaps Mass Effect could attempt such a reboot for a future title, simply done by creating a new title, set it in the Milky Way, disregarding the previous events and continuing on a new adventure. Now if that doesn't intrigue you because obviously it's a retcon, perhaps BioWare could simply reboot the original trilogy, or as I assume we'd all prefer, reboot Andromeda's story, taking this new direction towards the discovery of the Andromeda Galaxy into an exciting, encapsulating narrative with the original team helming the way as it was supposed to be. You wouldn't need Ryder or the Tempest or the Ket. All it would be is a story about discovery in the Andromeda Galaxy, completely rehashed, rebooted in a different way. At best, this concept works as a retconning for a future title, ignoring or only subtly mentioning the past, perhaps as a reboot of the previous games, or it could even be a new adventure entirely, just retconning certain parts of the previous games or not even mentioning them. It's a bit of a tease, but I feel if that's the only way that BioWare could return with a reboot, then it's still an idea. Now the final potential future for Mass Effect, at least regarding this video, comes from one of my Swallowbird patrons, Ellie Deason. As they quote, "They really need to do the First Contact War. It's been hinted at for so long that the hype behind it might put them back into the good books for most fans. It's also an important part of the Mass Effect universe that deals with humanity's first attempts at colonizing and first contact with an alien species." Now this prequel idea, I agree partly to this concept. I'd love a prequel to Mass Effect because I'd simply love another Mass Effect game. Going back and witnessing key events and characters that have shaped the experiences that we've cultivated in the trilogy, that'd be a very, very interesting and fun idea. For instance, it'd make for an encapsulating story if we, as a human, were to be one of the very few to travel into the first Mass Effect relay for the first time in history. Going through the Charon relay with an entire squad of humanity's best, now that would be an enthralling experience. Witnessing characters like Alec Ryder, Ashley's grandfather, people who were in the First Contact War, high-ranking officers, and just witnessing their first origin stories. We'd see the likes of Jack Harper before he became the Elusive Man, fighting in this galactic war against the Turians. We could have a story that uncovers what really is humanity, what makes us human, how are we different from these aliens, what defines a person. Plenty of previous narratives could also be unfolded, setting the way for the trilogy. And as much as this sounds like a great idea for a prequel, the thing that lacks is we all know the ending to it. Jack Harper becomes the Elusive Man, he gets indoctrinated, Alec Ryder starts the Andromeda Initiative, Ash's grandfather surrenders, the Turians and the humans eventually settle their ways. We know the story, it's been told thousands of times within the games, the books and the comics. It's a sold story, and although it's a really good one and it's crucial to the Mass Effect universe, I feel to go back to that may just be slightly underwhelming because we know the story. Now I do think it's a great idea, especially witnessing and seeing previous characters before they develop, and seeing their origin stories. That's great, but again, that ship has already sailed, my friends. We know those plots already. It'd just be a rehash of those plots in my opinion. So take it as you leave it. But anyhow guys, that'll do it for me today regarding the future of Mass Effect. Which concept do y'all prefer the most? Do you have a completely different one that Jackdaw hasn't even hinted towards? Something completely astronomical that Mass Effect could just re-envision itself from that idea? Let me know down below. But yeah guys, tell me down below what you think about my ideas, which one you would prefer, how you see Mass Effect returning, and your current opinion on the franchise. Of course, Anthem is literally about to ship. From that development, I assume half, if not 75% of the team will be working on Dragon Age 4, and there may be a small skeleton team cultivating ideas at Mass Effect, but again, that's not going to be for quite a while. Anthem sailing next month. Dragon Age 4 is around 2021. I would say a Mass Effect 4 or whatever it will be about 2024, 2025. I'm being generous here. It's still nice to speculate and have a look at my favorite franchise, however, so do let me know what y'all thinking down below. But hey guys, for all your things BioWare, Mass Effect, Anthem, and Dragon Age 4, you're already in the right place. But until the next one, I should go. Whoa, whoa, whoa.